Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula for SimonsSTM.com. Welcome back for another Yippee For Yana episode. In this video, I have a simple and easy to mass produce Christmas card idea featuring the Outline Ornaments background stamp from Simon. I'm sorry my voice doesn't sound like it usually does. I have a bit of a cold, but hopefully I'm on my way to recovery. I'll show you several simple tricks you can use to add color and interest to this background without really coloring it in a traditional sense of way. I love to create with stamps like this. First of all, stamps like this background allow you to easily make a stunning background for a card. The background itself is self-sufficient and you don't need to add much to it to make a beautiful project. And lastly, even though this is an outline image, it doesn't mean you have to color it from scratch or color it at all. I love to use colored cardstock when working with stamps like this. The colored cardstock provides a beautiful base color for my project, and from there, if I want, I can add an additional color, some shading, or some special effects. I stamped this background in clear embossing ink onto Simon's soft navy cardstock, and I heat embossed it in antique gold embossing powder. I love the combination of these products. The soft navy is a beautiful dark blue, perfect for modern Christmas cards, and the antique gold embossing powder is simply an all-time favorite of mine. It goes well with just about anything. With the heat embossing done, I used the pencil eraser and I erased the leftover anti-static powder that I had on the paper. The powder leaves a milky residue and it dulls the color of the cardstock a bit, so it is always best to clean it up. And here's our background. It already looks stunning. Before we move on to the next step, I like to trim my background to size. I'm making an A2 card. It measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, so I've trimmed this background to that size exactly. This way, if I decide to do any coloring in the next step, I'm not coloring any unnecessary areas. Now, whenever I work with colored cardstock, I still like to use my Copic markers, but I also love to incorporate my shimmer pens and my specialty opaque pens. Shimmer looks especially beautiful on dark colors of cardstock. The dark paper helps it shine, it helps it pop. You can see I applied quite a bit of shimmer onto that scrap piece of paper. This is the leftover from the background I just trimmed. And I love to use shimmer pens to add little shimmery accents, although you can use them to coat large areas as well, like an entire ornament if you want. I have the leftover embossed piece as well, and I like to use that to test my pens before I commit to using any particular pen on the card. I mentioned I like to use Copic markers on colored cardstock. Copic markers or any alcohol markers are translucent. They're not opaque, like for example, a white Jelly Roll pen that I just tested here. That means if I use a light color marker, let's say a light blue over this soft navy cardstock, it will not be visible once the marker dries. Now, why do I say when the marker dries? Because when you first apply the marker onto the paper, regardless of the marker color, you wet the paper, and on the dark colors of cardstock, you can see the wet spot. You need to wait for the liquid to evaporate before you can begin to see the actual marker color, the true color on this paper. So light colors of marker will leave no color on dark colors of paper, but you can still use your dark colors of markers to add shading. For this paper, I've found I can use B34. This is the lightest blue in this particular color combination. B97, it is a medium blue in this color combination. And B99, this is the darkest blue. You can see these are pretty dark markers. If I were to use them on a white cardstock, they would give me a very deep dark blue. I can use a combination of these 3 markers to add shading to my ornaments. It's very easy to do, and it creates a beautiful effect. It also saves you a ton of time, as you aren't really coloring the entire background, you're simply adding shading. Now, this color does look quite vibrant at the moment, but in a few minutes, it will dull a little bit as the liquid will evaporate and the paper will become dry. I finished adding shading to this background, and here's the result. I think it looks amazing, and considering the amount of time it took me to create it, I think it is a fantastic technique for mass-producing cards. You can also try this technique on other colors of cardstock, perhaps a dark green or a dark purple, but I honestly never have success when I'm using something other than blue. Maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I do like that blue color a lot. There are a few what I call background spots in between the ornaments, and I want to differentiate those from the ornaments, so I'm coloring them much darker using a C10 marker, a very dark gray. You can also use black. This adds color to our background, a color that's different from the rest of the ornaments, and it helps the ornaments stand out. Now at this point, we can leave our background as is, but we can also keep working on it. For me, that's where the shimmer pens come into play. I love to use shimmer pens over dark cardstock to add details. Now I'm not going to color all of my ornaments. I'm rather going to add shimmer to sections, to flowers, to ornament toppers, to some of the ornament stripes, to hearts, and to the snowflake. Again, the shimmer will look less dramatic once the coloring dries, once the liquid evaporates. But I think it still looks absolutely amazing, and it is especially beautiful for Christmas cards because of all of that shimmer. With the coloring done, I trimmed this panel down a little bit as I wanted to foam mount it onto a white card base to have a white border. It also looks amazing when added onto a card front without any border at all, so your call however you want to cut it. With backgrounds like this, I prefer to stay away from large bulky sentiments, and I often go for a skinny strip sentiment instead. It can be a stamped or a foiled sentiment, or even one of those pre-printed sentiment strips from Simon. Now, I do try to use something small so that it doesn't cover much of the background. I added several scrap panels of cardstock to the back of my main panel. This helps me to flatten the panel. I did heat emboss it, so it warped just a little bit. And also this helps to pop the panel up on the card. I love to add dimension to my projects, and this is one of the ways I do that. I also use the skinny foam adhesive strip to foam mount the sentiment on the card. Now at this point, once again, you can call it done, or if you're feeling festive, you can add some small embellishments to finish the card up. I opted to add some white gems from Spellbinders, scattering them around the sentiment. I hope you'll give this idea a try. If you make a card inspired by this video, we'd love it if you shared your project online and tagged us on social media. We always enjoy seeing what you guys are making. Thanks so much for joining me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.